What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 30 Minutes of Hell podcast, episode 4. I'm your host, Brandon Baker. I'm joined by Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson. You can find us on YouTube under the Field of 68 Podcast Network. You can find us on Twitter or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, under 30 Minutes of Hell. And we're pretty excited still to be bringing you Arkansas basketball coverage. It's been a rough week, but Arkansas went 1-2 last week in the Bahamas in the Battle for Atlantis tournament. Won their first game against Stanford. Had a pretty good game against Memphis. Lost that one though, and then turned around and had a pretty brutal loss to North Carolina. The final score in that game was a little more lopsided than maybe the game was. It was pretty competitive throughout. Um, saw some good things from the Hogs, but still a lot of negatives that they're going to have to get figured out as they move forward, especially this week coming up next this Wednesday. Duke comes to town, the Bud Walton Arena, to play the Hogs in a very highly anticipated marquee matchup. So everyone's been looking forward to that one. And I think the excitement is still high for that game, even with the Hogs kind of struggling lately. But we got a lot to talk about, guys.
Yeah.
So I guess first things first, how are we feeling this week? Just give me a quick vibe check after the Hogs go 1-2 this week. Joey, I'll start with you.
Yeah, we definitely have things that we need to improve on. I don't feel like the tournament was a total wash. We saw things that we saw that needed to be improved, and we saw some of those things that were improved. Like our defense was much better than what we had seen. We saw some things that we wanted to see improved and defensively, and we did. So definitely wasn't happy with the 1-2 finish in that tournament, but wasn't. I'm not gonna go off my rocker concerned with some of the things either. But we can get into the good, the bad, and the ugly here in a little bit. But just kind of a vibe check. I'm feeling all right.
I feel like a Hog fan, depressed and gutted and still alive. But, like Joey said, there's some positives, there's some negatives. I'm not too happy, and I am concerned about a lot of things. But overall, I think that it's not too deep into the season to be completely scared. And Muss, I trust. He's a solid coach, so I put all my faith in him to fix the things that we see, because I know he sees double that, I'm sure. So overall, worried, but not out of it yet.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Definitely a lot of things that were not great through that tournament. Some concerns to pay attention to. It's not realistic to pretend like everything's just going to be okay because the Hogs have been okay in previous seasons after struggling early. I don't think that you can just write them off and say, oh, they'll be fine. They're going to make the tournament and go to the second weekend. Just because it's happened before doesn't mean it will continue to happen. So it's important to pay attention to what's going on in some of those negatives and things that they need to work on. But there were some positives, like we talked about. I'll start things off right off the bat with Tramon Mark was electric through the whole tournament. And we'll go ahead right now and get this out of the way. The injury update is basically there is no injury update. Musselman said that he's still getting tested for things. Today, we're recording on Monday. They had a spine specialist coming in to run some more tests on Mark. It seems like if there was something to me, I'm not a doctor, but it seems like if there is something that was just tremendously, like, egregiously wrong, that they might not still need to be testing things. So maybe that's a good sign, but again, not a doctor, and we don't know yet. He hasn't been ruled out or ruled in for the Wednesday's game. But
And
Matt, you want to speak on
yeah,
that?
I'll interject with that and say one thing that concerns me just a little bit is the fact that they did bring in a spine specialist. I'm not necessarily worried that something is wrong with him there, as far as like the MRI was negative, which is a great thing. That's good news. Imaging's negative. But if he is still feeling pain, that's probably why they brought in a spine specialist. If they were like, hey, nothing's wrong, but he's in significant pain, having a lot of trouble walking, something to be a little bit concerned about. But I mean, we've all fallen on our tailbone before playing basketball or whatever sport. My goodness, it's hard to walk. So I don't think it's anything to freak out about, but I don't necessarily think we're going to see him this week, is my
I mean,
guess.
anytime a player leaves the court in a stretcher, there's
Right.
room for concern. I would much rather see Tremont sit out this Duke game and be okay come March Madness time, get healthy, like get that, just get the pain away and miss,
Right.
this one big game, then play this game and have those issues, just plague
Right.
him throughout the season. So,
Constant soreness, whatever it may be.
mhm.
We just want to get it
Yep.
fixed right now.
Definitely agree with you guys there because this is a big game and it just sucks that it happens as far as the timing of it because I think Matt's probably right. And again, a lot of this is speculation. The official updates are just that he's being tested and we haven't really been given a lot of information. They're keeping it closer to the chest. So that's just kind of our thoughts and what we can see from the outside, what it kind of looks like to this point. But like Joey said, hoping that he can get all that pain, relieved and get healthier as we move forward in the season, even if that means missing this game. As much as that does kind of suck on his end, but injuries happen. We just wish him the best and hope he gets back to it.
Yep.
But before his injury, my goodness, the man was unconscious shooting the ball
Lights out.
all through the battle for Atlantis. He was averaging almost 24 points a game, 56% from the field and 42% from long range. Had a career high 34 points against UNC before he went down with injury. Was really the only reason Arkansas was alive in that game because the offense was still struggling as a whole. But Mark just couldn't miss, was finding his spots, taking advantage of mismatches, hitting threes, getting to the rim. He's doing everything for them on offense. And I think that he's a lot better ball handler than what I gave him credit for coming into the season. I wasn't expecting him to be such a weapon in isolation situations. I knew that he could get to his spots and score in spurts when needed, but man, he's looking like a true primary scorer right now for us, which is fantastic because a lot of other guys that we thought were going to be that way are not really stepping up their game where they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
I'll throw it over, Matt. I'll throw it to you first. I think that you want to talk a little bit about a certain freshman and his time in the tournament.
Yes, Layden Blocker. What a basketball guy. I mean, he is just a hustle player. I loved watching him the entire tournament, and he solidified himself as a weapon for us defensively and just all out effort wise. I mean, we talked before this, Joey mentioned, and I was on it. He had 3 or so plays that entire tournament where he would run, grab the ball, toss it off the back of somebody's head. It was great to watch. I love seeing plays like that. It's those plays that go unnoticed. And I feel it's similar to Jalen Williams' charges, just hustle stats. They go a little bit unnoticed, but have major impacts in that game. And there were plays throughout Memphis, even UNC, and definitely Stanford that changed the game in a major way, kept it close and competitive. And one thing I want to point out, he had 3 steals in 2 out of the 3 games, which is phenomenal. I could get a steal in high school, let alone in 2 college games. And he only had 1 turnover that entire time in the Bahamas. So happy about that. I love Layden Blocker. I can't wait to see more of him. I think he solidified himself in our rotation for the long run, and he's only going to get better. He is just a freshman. I can't wait to see his offense take off a little bit as well. So,
And Matt, I kind of want to hop in here and just go out on a limb and say, I don't hope to only see Layden Blocker in the rotation. I want to see him starting. I want to see him getting starting minutes. He's one of those guys that can sit down and guard the best player. He is so quick defensively. He moves his feet well. He's one of those guys. I was trying to think of an NBA comparison for him, and ironically enough, the guy that my mind kept going to was Patrick Beverly, another former Hog. But he's just one of those energy guys that he's chaotic enough to cause problems for the opposing team and just does the right things. I think we were talking a little bit outside of the recording that he can be too energetic sometimes, too chaotic, but he's a freshman. It's early in his career. Very excited to see where the season takes Blocker this year.
What's crazy is he is more calm on defense than he is, I feel, on offense. And that's unheard of. You usually see a freshman being a little bit more scared on defense because, oh, shoot, I'm going against guys that have been here 3-4 years, So I'm happy with what I'm seeing so far. I think he's going to be phenomenal. And funny enough, you should say Patrick Beverly. He's a talker too. Leighton Blogger is a talker, and of course I think he did get a tech talking to a ref there against Memphis. Everybody was getting techs that game, and I won't go into that.
Yeah, definitely great points. I agree with Joey about wanting to see Locker play at least starters minutes because Musk doesn't always start his best five. That includes Caleb Battle this year. He's averaging like 30 minutes a game off the bench. He's one of maybe the best scorer on the team, even when he's not starting, as long as he's getting that 28 to 31 minutes a game being impactful. If Blocker finds himself in that kind of role, I think he could still be incredibly impactful. But I do think that Musselman does tend to lean on defense in his starting five and bring offense off the bench. So I think that's a mark in Blocker's favor, the fact that he is such a fearless defender like you guys were mentioning. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's really the starting point guard going forward. And maybe in some games you can see us go bigger and start Devo at the 1 whenever you're playing a huge team and bring in somebody else at the 3 like Davenport or someone like that. But yeah, great points. I wanted to bring up real quick too, Brazil had a great tournament in terms of rebounding. I think he had 15 offensive rebounds through the first 2 games. Just was a monster on the glass. A lot of them were led to put back dunks or him getting fouled or points off second chance points. And he was really active. And that's really what we need him to be because he's not really shown to be a one-on-one creator the way that maybe some people were hoping he would take that step and become that creator where you can just give him the ball and kind of get out of the way for a possession. We haven't seen that at all from him. He's either cutting backdoor and getting dunks, spotting up on the 3-point line, maybe taking a dribble or 2 and pulling it up to shoot, or crashing the glass like we saw in this tournament where he's creating plays with his athleticism more so than his ball handling or playmaking or anything like that. And that's okay. I mean, not everybody has to be a playmaker with the ball in their hands. You need those guys that do other things. And I really think that he could fit in well offensively if he continues to do that. Didn't have quite the same impact on the glass in the third game. It's hard to know if that was a matchup thing, if maybe his legs are tired playing his third game in 3 days. These early season tournaments are hard, and for that reason, to test your guys and to get experience playing the quick turnarounds and maybe playing deeper into your bench than you usually do, things like that. So I'm not reading too much into that one game. It's hard to have 3 good games in a row like that, but I was encouraged from what I saw from him on the offensive glass. I thought Joey mentioned earlier, I thought that Devo played pretty well as a facilitator, even if he didn't have a ton of assists. This team brought in guys like Caleb Battle and L. Ellis to be kind of those core first facilitating guards, and I don't think that we've seen the highest potential of either of them yet in that area. We've seen a lot of scoring and bursts from Caleb Battle, but we haven't seen a lot of creation for others in terms of driving in the lane, getting in the paint and kicking out, or operating out of the pick and roll, things like that. A lot of that has really been heavily leaned on Devo's shoulders this year, maybe more so than we expected, but I think he's stepped up to the task pretty well and not turned it over a ton leading up to this tournament. He turned it over quite a bit in some of these games, but when you're forced into that role, sometimes that's just how it goes. I think that he's done a pretty good job of handling that facilitator role that maybe he wasn't expecting to be in this early in the season when you have so many other offensive minded guards around you. So I was impressed with Devo kind of taking charge, taking leadership, and facilitating that. Even if he does turn it over some, if it doesn't always lead to assists, he was the only one creating for a long time. Our offense looked so stagnant that at least he was doing something. So, and Joey, I think you had one more point about our host defense against the opposing big men in this tournament.
Yeah, our defense has definitely improved on bigs and in general. I'm not saying it's where it needs to be. There's always room for growth. But the big men, we held incredibly well. In that first game against Stanford, Renault, he had 8 points, 10 rebounds off 3 for 8 shooting. 10 rebounds, it's a lot, and it was higher than what his average is. But he also had 2 overtimes to get those extra rebounds. I think he had 6 boards going into the first overtime. So did incredibly well with that matchup, him being their leading scorer and their top rebounder. David Jones on Memphis, despite averaging 7 rebounds a game going into the tournament, we held him to 4. He did torch us offensively, but wasn't grabbing rebounds. Baycott, 9 points, 4 rebounds off 3 for 9 shooting. He had 18 boards in the game prior to ours. So I was very impressed with Chandler Lawson specifically. He did incredibly well in that Stanford game, guarding Renault. We had Brazil, who rebounded exceptionally well against Stanford. You know, we just had those guys who they saw the matchup and they held them to where they needed to. Obviously, came out with 2 losses despite doing that so well. But I was very happy with where that was in the tournament.
Yep. And one more quick note I wanted to point out before we move on. The free throw shooting has still been pretty good for Arkansas, both in terms of earning attempts at the free throw line and converting at a high level. They averaged 26.7 free throw attempts per game in the Bahamas and knocked them down at 76% as a team. You can't ask for a lot more than that. I think that currently they're ranked number 4 in the country. I need to double check that stat. Number 4 in the country in total free throw attempts per game, which is phenomenal,
Very
where you
good.
want to be, especially when your offense is struggling. Not only does it slow the game down a little bit, get your feet under you, it gives you a chance to get free points at the free throw line, and it gives your guys a chance to see the ball go through the hoop. And if you got a guy like Tramon Mark and Caleb Battle see that ball go through the hoop one time, I mean, we all know it can happen. They can catch fire in a heartbeat. So I think earning those free throw attempts is a huge thing that we're still doing very well, despite not doing everything that we want to see them do. I think that's definitely a strong suit I've been happy with for sure so far. And there was quite a bit of negativity around those games as well. A lot of things that we didn't really like to see, a lot of things that we still need to improve on that we're going to dive into after a quick break.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
Welcome back. Let's get back into it. Some of the bad things from the tournament, some things that we want to see improved as we move forward. Matt, you have first thoughts on this?
Yes. So the main thing I'm going to talk about in my list of negatives is the points off turnovers. My goodness, 27 points off turnovers against Memphis. Granted, Memphis was a very close game, a winnable game, but 27 points off turnovers is ridiculous. We had 17 against North Carolina and then only 10 against Stanford, and we won. Okay. So we got to get that under control. I don't know what to necessarily do about that other than hustle, be in the right spot, and get back on defense. Devo led the team in turnovers against Stanford with 5, and then Battle had 4 against Memphis. And another thing I want to touch on is it's not turnovers, but it is the fact that we had 2 guys against North Carolina who had 20 plus minutes and had no points. One of them was 0 for 4 from the field, and then both with 3 fouls. So Brazil and Devo, those guys are our leaders. We need that up. And I know Brandon mentioned, it's hard to have 3 good games in a row. I believe that. I don't think this is a norm for Brazil or for Devo. But those are games we need to win. We needed to win that game. That would have given us so much confidence going into Duke. And that's a big deal. And I think Brazil also had 3 turnovers in 20 minutes and no points, no field goals. We can't have that. So that's my big point. And the turnovers, points off turnovers, that all goes back to transition defense. And I think Brandon's going to talk a little bit about our defense and what we can do better.
Yeah, I thought that there were times in this tournament where you could see the guys make a conscious effort. I saw several times where there were guys that were really sprinting, trying to get back, and sometimes it didn't always matter. I know I watched a couple of times in the North Carolina game. You had guys like Mark and Brazil hustling to get back, but RJ Davis was already so far down the court that they either didn't catch him or they fouled him and still let him score, or just fouled him and let him get free throw attempts. So I thought that the effort maybe was there, that the adjustment was discussed. You could see it, but it didn't pan out yet. There's still too many points on fast break opportunities, and maybe not so as much as there was in that UNC Greensboro game when they ran us out of the gym in our own gym. But I did at least like some of the things I saw in transition, but it's still not where it needs to be. Musselman touched a little bit in his press conference today about how when you have guys crashing the offensive glass, it's kind of the way we were talking about how Brazil had like 15 offensive rebounds through 2 games, and you've got Leighton Blocker that's always crashing the glass hard and making big plays. And when you make those plays, it's huge, and you can't stop doing that. But you have to pick your spots and know when to crash and know when to get back on defense and guard your guy. If you can see that there's not really any chance that you're going to get that board, don't let your guy leak out in transition. Yeah, I think Musselman touched on Leighton Blocker specifically, how his matchup had 30 points in that game, and a lot of them came in the fast break. And that's not indicative of how good of a defender Blocker is, because Blocker's a great defender. I think sometimes he was just losing him in transition, trying to play too hard almost, which if you're a coach, maybe that's not the worst problem to have, is a guy that's going 110% all the time. But it's something that's got to adjust. And then the next big point that I wanted to bring up, and I think it leads into one of Joey's points here, that just the ball movement in general on offense, man, they just look discombobulated in general. It's not that we don't have offensive weapons. I think that no one really knows where they're supposed to be right now.
Exactly.
And Musselman has been vocal in the past about how he gives a lot of freedom to his guys on offense because he demands so much from them on defense. And that's generally fine, especially when you have a team like this with a lot of offensive weapons, but none of them really know their place yet. And we've got a lot of guys that are used to being towards the top of the scoring on their respective teams. And I almost wonder if maybe they're still trying not to step on each other's toes, if they're trying to sit back and watch and see, okay, it's his turn to go create, or if they're not sure if they're supposed to go screen yet. And just guys that maybe aren't as used to playing off ball as much as they are right now. I don't know. That seems like maybe that could be the case, because even off-ball screens, if you watch the guys that are going to set screens, they're walking into it, and the guy that's coming off the screen is just kind of walking his man into it, and he's not sure if he wants to cut back door or if he's going to run off of it hard. And just nothing is crisp on offense. No, there's no confidence in the motions. Nobody's stepping up to take confident shots until they see one go in. I mean, you see like Mark in against North Carolina, he made a couple shots, and all of a sudden he's the guy. He's dribbling the ball, he's taking pull-up shots, he's getting to the rim. That looked great. But if nobody is hitting at the moment, if there's not a defined guy that's on fire, it just looks like lost. Everyone's not sure what to do or who should get the ball or what goes next. Or I don't know how they fix that other than just playing more together. And maybe it's having more defined sets. That's not something Musselman runs a lot of. But some kind of motion maybe to get the offense moving, just so guys maybe have more of an idea of where they need to be next, rather than being slower and kind of lazy with their screens. But I don't know. It's frustrating to watch, and I have faith that they will figure it out as they learn to play together. But it's been rough so far. And I think, Joey, you wanted to touch a little bit on this point as well.
And yeah, Brandon, I think you made a great point. We've got way too much 1v1 basketball going on right now, but it's because we have guys like L. Ellis Mark and Battle, who used to be the guy on their respective teams. So whenever you have someone who is the only or the top scoring option on a team, and then they move into a team where there's, oh, 4 or 5 scoring options on the team, it's going to be an adjustment. So I want to see more fluid ball movement. I don't want to see the confusion of who's going to take the shot. I think you talked about it perfectly. Another thing that we've seen is the unforced turnovers are insane. We need to stop throwing the ball away on throwing the ball out of bounds on cuts because we don't know if a guy is cutting, coming to get the ball, setting a screen. There's just too much confusion in the offense. I would really like to see some free flowing sets where it's not necessarily a set offense, but it's something where even if it's just as simple as a pass screen away type thing, something to where we're not playing that one-on-one basketball and we're getting some movement with screens, with cuts, with rolls. There's just way too much one-on-one basketball being played and a lot of people standing around and watching, and that doesn't create open shots. So definitely something that I want to see improved there.
Yeah, and I like what you said too about and it's not even just that it's one-on-one basketball, but the off-ball screens and the knowing where to be, because we've got guys that can go ISO in certain situations. We've got guys that can go score, but that shouldn't be all that they're doing.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the entire offense. And even when we are running off-ball screens, you've got, Devo's dribbling the ball on the left side of the court, and he's just standing there dribbling 6 feet behind the 3-point line while everyone else tries to figure out who they want to screen and where they want to go. And we're wasting 6, 7 seconds on the shot clock just trying to get somebody to move, trying to get somebody open. And I just think that we just need to be moving more ball cuts, off ball screens. Like you said, it doesn't have to be a set offense. Guys don't have to be like, this is where I'm going right now, but just something to get the offense moving to where guys know where to start at least, and then let your playmakers create.
And that way they still have the freedom of making plays. Like we've got enough playmakers and enough like guys like that are stars, could be stars on any team, that they can make that play. They don't move enough offensively to be the one to make that play, if that makes sense. So definitely something that they still have the ability to make that play. It just gives them more of the ability to, if
Right.
And one stat that real quick that goes along with what we're talking about, the ball movement stuff. In the Hogs' first game of the season, they had 21 assists on 28 made field goals, assisted 75% of their made field goals in their win over Alcorn State. Fantastic ball movement. We were super excited watching that game. Go back and listen to episode 1. It was one of our big talking points. Ball movement looked fantastic. In their 6 games since then, they have a total of 52 assists on 159 made field goals. That's 33% of their made field goals have come off of an assist. That's got to be almost dead last in the entire country right now in college basketball. And it's just not sustainable. You got to be able to move the ball. You can't play ISO all the time. So, right. Matt, do you have any more negative points you want to touch on here?
Well, I would say this is more of a little question. I personally think, I know you guys mentioned you don't need to run a set, but we have a lot of spot up shooters that we can get open, like Davenport. Do you guys think there should be some sets that we do run to get those guys open? And especially now that Mark's out for a little bit, possibly. What do you guys think about that? I think we need some, but
yeah, I'm not opposed at all to just even maybe twice a game. I don't disagree with you at all. And I think that Battle is an excellent candidate to take that shot, because he's one of those guys that it does not take long to get him going. If you can run one play where he's coming off of a double ball screen or a double off ball screen, popping out to the top of the key or popping into the corner where he's got multiple screeners trying to get him open, I think that's a great start for him to get going. If he sees that shot go in, you don't have to run anything else for him. He will figure it out. You know what I mean? So I definitely agree with that, Matt. I wouldn't mind at all seeing a couple of set plays to just try to get guys in rhythm.
Right.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I think that we could definitely run some set plays to get some shooters open. I don't want it to, dictate our offense, having to run a play. But I definitely think whenever the offense is stagnant, like we've seen, we saw it against North Carolina, we saw it against Memphis, it would be good to have something that we know would lead to a good look.
Right. I agree with that 100%. That's all I want. Looks, good looks.
Yep. Yep. All right. And then one more, or yeah, I think one more point here that we wanted to touch on. Joey asked me this question while we were watching this game and wanted to bring it up on the podcast. He asked me about Trevor Brazil and his defensive potential. Joey, I'll let you word that how you want to word it.
Yeah, I'm with a guy that athletic and that capable. We haven't seen what we've expected to see from him this year, especially defensively. I know it's early in the year. I know he's coming off a big injury, but I'm concerned that all that we will see from Brazil is the quote unquote potential defensively, the what if, because I mean we see these games where he has 4 or 5 blocks, but we see him chasing defensively. We see him getting blown by defensively. We see the big blocks, but if he's not getting a block, he's not doing much. And I that does concern me moving forward. I hope that I'm wrong about it, but just concerned that all that he'll be is defensive potential. I really hope that we don't see anything like that moving forward, but who knows, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that you're going to see a lot of tough matchups for him. Teams playing a guy at the 4 position that's mobile enough that will cause him problems on the perimeter. We've already seen it a little bit this year, what you're talking about, where he's trying to run the 3-point shooter off the line and he just kind of gets blown by.
Mm-hmm.
Or if he is the lone big man in the game and the other team has a skilled center, we've seen him kind of get bullied in the post, even against guys that aren't among the elite centers in the league. If they're strong and skilled, he's not he's not doing well at holding his ground in a one-on-one scenario in the post. He thrives in the open court and defense where he can get tip passes and block shots like you're talking about. But I don't disagree with you that one-on-one he's not been impactful as a defender. I think he can be the most impactful defender if he plays well, but we have not seen it. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one reason why he hasn't been in some games, in some lineups. Like I know in the last game he had some foul trouble, but I mean, you see Muss playing guys like Davenport or Mark, or even sometimes he's playing Lawson at the 4 alongside Mackay and running these different lineups, just trying to match up because Brazil isn't able to hold his own against some of these matchups, and
Yeah.
that does concern me.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on Brazil's defense?
I think Brazil is going to be as good defensively as he wants to be. I think he has, like Joey said, all the potential to be the most impactful defender on the court, but defense is such a effort thing. You have to want to play defense. You need to dig deep and hustle and make these plays. And I think he's going to be as good as he wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to be such an impactful defensive player and then step back and give full force on offense as well. And I know he wants to be a good offensive player. I mean, that's what we have known him to be.
Mm-hmm.
But he stepped up in those first 2 games with his rebounding. And I think he has potential to impact the game more than just offense. And I feel that's another leeway into run a set for him on offense. Get him open so he can impact offense and still give a lot of effort on defense, not having to create his own shot on offense. So as much effort as he can give, I think that's how good he is at defense.
Yeah. I like what you said there too, Matt, because a lot of guys, and it's just human nature. It's not a conscious decision, but when you're seeing your shots go in, you're probably more likely to give effort on the defensive end. You're playing harder all over the court whenever you're feeling it. And
Right.
and that's the case with everybody. That's not just Brazil being lazy until he can score. Like, I'm not saying he's that type of player. It's just human nature. When you're feeling better, your shots are going in, you're going to give more effort. It just naturally. And one final thing I wanted to bring up on Brazil too is that he has gotten a couple of just stupid fouls that after the whistle, the flagrants, the technicals. I don't know exactly how many he racked up in the Bahamas, but and I know he's trying to be chippy, and I know he's trying to get in people's heads, and I don't fault him for doing that, but you got to be a little bit smarter about
Just
it.
dumb
You're
plays,
giving away
man.
points. Yeah.
We have 2 less technical fouls. We win against Memphis.
That's true. Yeah.
And-
So just Go ahead, Joey.
And it's not even like he's just being chippy, like he's in the moment. He kicked a player when he was down. I don't like that. He
Yep.
he ran intentionally out of his way to bump a guy. Like they're just stupid plays, and he
Right.
needs to be more disciplined in that. Like I said, I love Brazil. I think he's got all the potential in the world, but you can't be making stupid plays like that.
I agree completely. And those are the type of things that take you out of a game early too. We talked about he didn't play a whole lot against UNC, and when you're picking up ticky tack fouls, it's a quick way to get ejected. It's a quick way to get in foul trouble. It's a quick way, to just start things on the court. It's not really what we want to see from him. We want to see him on the court doing better, improving all these things we've been. So that's definitely, I agree with you. That is something that I want to see less of. Don't really want to see any of that. All right, so coming up this week, we've got a big game, the biggest game of the season, arguably the biggest game in the history of Bud Walton Arena, if we want to go back and look at it. Duke comes to Bud Walton Arena on Wednesday, November 29th for an 8:15 ESPN tip-off against the Hogs. Primetime marquee matchup. Arkansas has been struggling lately, but I think the energy's still up for this game. I know I'm still really excited to watch them play,
Yeah.
just to watch Duke play in general, Duke play against the Hogs. It's a big team, one of the biggest games probably in the history of Bud Walton Arena, and there's really not much more to be said. I mean, everyone knows the weight that Duke carries, just the name of the program, no matter who all's there. But you throw in a couple of likely first round picks, uh, All Americans. You got Kyle Filipowski, who's probably a top 3 player in the country right now, and you've got a big matchup on your hands. Duke currently is 5-1 on the season. Their only loss came in the first week of the season to Arizona at home. Duke was at home in that game, so that's interesting. Their only noteworthy win really so far has been against Michigan State, and that was in a neutral site game. And so this Wednesday against the Hogs will actually be their first true road game of the season. And I know Arkansas hasn't really played a true road game yet either, but I'm hopeful that Bud Walton Arena might play a big factor into this game with Duke not having seen a real away crowd yet. So that's definitely a key to the game that I'm paying attention to. Duke is currently top 10 in Ken Palm's adjusted offensive efficiency. How much of that can be attributed to playing, not the greatest schedule to this point in their season? Who knows? But they look great when they are on the court. I think that they're scoring at a high level. They've got a lot of great players, like I was talking about. Kyle Filipowski, he was number 3 on CBS Sports top 100 players coming into the season, which is kind of interesting because Arkansas has already played number 1 and number 2. They played Zach Edey in the preseason exhibition against Purdue, and then Armando Bacot was number 2 on CBS's list. And of course, the Hogs just played him in North Carolina on Friday. And it's also interesting. I thought that this is the first time since 1990, I believe. Let me double check that. Yeah, 1990 since 1990 that the Hogs have played both Duke and North Carolina in the same week, or the same season. I mean, and it was actually in the same week during that season too. It was in the NCAA tournament. Arkansas beat North Carolina in the Sweet 16 and then lost to Duke in the Final Four in that season. So kind of a fun stat there.
Yeah.
But so yeah, Duke's got Kyle Filipowski coming to town, averaging 18.8 points a game, 8 rebounds. Brazil in a press conference kind of compared him to Zach Edey as a big physical dominant rebounder. Going to be a big key keeping him off the glass. And like we were talking about earlier, Arkansas has actually been doing pretty well limiting big men. So if that trend continues, I think they stand a good chance to limit Filipowski at least enough to stay in the game, to stay alive. It's not fair for me to say I'm not worried about him. Obviously, I'm worried about him, but the big men have not been an issue to date on any team that we've played. It's the guards and the mismatches that have been killing us, along with our own faults of turnovers, transition defense. The problems we're having. So Tyrese
Right.
Proctor, potential lottery pick, probable first round pick for Duke. Point guard, 12.5 points a game, almost 6 assists per game. I'm probably more concerned how we're going to limit him, especially if Mark is unable to go. More than likely, we're going to see Leighton Blocker and Devo on him a lot in this game. It'll be a matchup I'm interested to watch for the Hogs defensively. I'm worried about him picking us apart and getting out in transition, pushing the ball. So something to pay attention to. And then the other guy that I'm kind of keeping my eye on is Mark Mitchell, 6'8" sophomore. He's got a similar frame to Harrison Ingram, who Arkansas just played against for North Carolina. And North Carolina found a lot of success giving Ingram the ball in the post and just kind of letting him create in the second half of that game. And
Yeah.
he was bullying our four-man, whether it was Davenport, Mark, whoever was on the court. He was getting what he wanted, drawing fouls, making great passes out of double teams. So if Mark Mitchell is able to replicate that at all, that's a mismatch that I'm concerned about, that I'm definitely paying attention to. He's currently averaging 12 points a game, over 5 rebounds a game. Those are the big three guys that I'm kind of keeping my eye on right now heading into the matchup. And I know that could be anyone else that comes in and gives us their best shot. It somehow seems like every team always has that one guy that plays above their ceiling when they play the Hogs. So maybe it's none of these three, but those are the guys that I'm paying attention to. Matt, I'll throw it over to you. If you have any thoughts on what Arkansas really needs to do well in this game against Duke, and any thoughts you have on these players.
Yeah. So first, I'll talk about Duke's players. The easiest thing, just the quickest thing I could say to get it out there, is everybody that gets significant minutes on Duke can shoot the ball. End of story. If they're open, they can knock down a three. Our perimeter defense has to be great. Not good, great. It has to be great for us to stand a really good chance at stopping Duke. And passing is great. I mean, Proctor is really good. So I know Brandon kind of touched up on him a little bit. I think the biggest thing I think everybody's concerned about is if Tramon Mark does not play, who's going to be our guy? Who's going to be our guy against Duke? And I'm going to say this. I do not think that it's going to be one person. It's going to have to be the entire team. Everybody's going to have to get points. Everybody's going to have to score. We're going to have to move the ball. You move the ball, you give yourselves a shot. You settle for fadeaways, step backs, one-on-one ball, kiss the game goodbye. Mm-hmm. That is my honest opinion on what we need to do against Duke. So teams that have played Duke well, have been up at half or beat them, they move the ball well. They pass the ball around, got them off their defense that they do, switching screens, whatever, getting a guy open. So I think sets may be a good way to go, and just pass the dang basketball, and we will give you guys a game. That's the best we can do. Joey, you go ahead.
Yeah,
take it.
Matt, you mentioned the shooters. Duke definitely has some shooters on their team. A couple guys that weren't mentioned that are definitely guys to watch out for. Jared McCain shooting the ball at a 46% clip from deep. Jeremy Roach, obviously we know he's a scorer, shooting 40% from deep. Definitely need to do good about closing out on those guys. And Duke moves the ball extremely well. They're averaging almost 18 assists per game, and with the defense that we've seen from the Razorbacks, how inconsistent it is, that concerns me because we haven't rotated well defensively. We end up chasing guys, and we can't fall into that predicament of chasing players around the court as they go and find their spots and hit threes on us. We just something that we can't do. We need to get back on transition defense. We can't let them. They will push the ball every chance they get, and I saw them do it. They'll get the ball out of the basket, they'll throw it down the court, and they'll have an easy bucket. And that's been the terrible story of Arkansas for all of our games so far, is not getting back even off made field goals. So definitely want to see us hitting some good transition defense, and don't want to chase them around on let them get into their set offense and give up easy buckets. Simple as that. I think if we do those couple things well, we win the game.
Yeah. Yep. I think Arkansas's got a good chance in this one. I'll be honest. I know that it's not sunshine and rainbows right now in Razorback Nation, but the Hogs have been showing improvements. They've shown flashes of all the pieces they need to be a good team. They just haven't put it all together yet. And I think they will. If there's anybody I believe will get it done, it's Musselman. Can't guarantee that it'll get done by Wednesday. It's a tough team, a tough test, but I think they stand a good chance. I'd feel a lot better about it if Mark was healthy. I can't lie about that. He's been huge for us, but wish him the best. Wish that he gets better, even if he's not able to play in this game. I hate it for him more than I do for us if he does have to miss this one. But I'm still excited for this game. I mean, it's Duke. You know, ticket prices
Very
are still
exciting.
through the roof
Right.
right now. I
Yeah.
think it's like $500 a seat in the nosebleed still. So real quick, I just want, does Arkansas win or lose? Give me a prediction. Matt, I'll start with you.
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, Brandon. Arkansas is gonna win. Give me 83-79. Duke loses. Arkansas wins. Back to 94, baby. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm all in. I got Arkansas. Joey.
You know, thinking on this question, Arkansas always shows up for the big ones, don't they? Especially at Bud Walton. So
Come on.
at first I was gonna say no, I think Duke's gonna take it, especially with the thought of Mark being out, but you know, I think Devo's gonna show up to play. I think Battle's gonna light up the court. I think Brazil's gonna come and hopefully, fingers crossed, grab 15 boards. But I'm gonna go Arkansas in a tight one. I think I'm gonna go Arkansas 79, Duke 74.
Okay. All right. Well, now you guys are going to make me choose between being the bad guy or following suit here. I am nervous about pulling out the win with Mark out. I think regardless, Arkansas is going to play a good game. I think they're going to play well. I think they're going to push Duke and really show up in Bud Walton Arena. I think that crowd is going to be a big factor. It always is, even when we're not playing well in the season. You look back at games like Auburn, the Kentucky we lost in I've ever experienced. So it's hard. I still think
Come
I
on,
still
Brandon.
think that Duke is probably going to pull this one out. I'm going to be the bad guy, but
Somebody had to.
the schedule balances out after this. The Hogs get a couple more games before they head into SEC play. I think Mark is going to get healthy. I think they're going to figure things out. I think they're going to have a great conference slate, conference run. I think they're going to get this out of the way. You know, this slump out of the way. I think they're going to learn from it. And at some point, this team is going to gel. We're not going to see the same level of play 2 months from now. So I don't think it happens between the Bahamas and now. I think we see improvement. I think we see a great game. But I think I'm taking Duke. I'll say 81-76. So there you have it. Brandon's the bad guy. Fake fan.
Classic.
Roast me if you need to.
Ooh.
So
Get after
that'll
him on
do
Twitter.
it for this episode, though. Episode 4 of 30 Minutes of Help podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube under the Field of 68 Podcast Network. Find us on Twitter, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your stuff at. 30 Minutes of Hell podcast. Drop us a follow, a like, comment on our stuff, subscribe, leave a comment, a review, whatever you do on those sites. It really helps us out. And you can follow all of us on Twitter as well. I'm at B Baker Hogs. Matt is at the Matt Jackson, and Joey is at P0 Music. All on Twitter. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, and whether or not you believe me, go Hogs always. So we'll see you guys next week.
Pig,
Thank
baby.
you.
Thanks, everyone.